Did you know some of the most successful companies in history started with the wrong idea? YouTube was supposed to be a dating site, Instagram was supposed to be a check in app, Slack was supposed to be a video game. None of them succeeded with their original ideas, and yet all three went on to become multi-billion-dollar companies. This raises a strange question. Do great startups actually begin with bad ideas? Because if you study these companies very closely, you start noticing a very strange pattern. And once you see this pattern, you start seeing it almost everywhere. Here is what most people believe about great companies. A founder has a brilliant idea, they build the product, the company goes on to become very successful, clean, linear, predictable. Startup history actually tells us a completely different story. The biggest companies in the world did not start with the right idea, they discovered the right idea later. And the founders who actually went on to find it were not smarter than everyone else, they were just paying attention, very close attention to the right signals that absolutely matter. Let me show you. YouTube, three founders, Steve Chen, Chad Hurley, Javed Karim. Their original idea was very simple. People would upload videos introducing themselves. Others would watch and decide if they wanted to date them. Nobody used it for dating. Instead, something unexpected actually happens. People started uploading random videos, funny moments, travel clips, pets, music, content that had absolutely nothing to do with dating. A lesser founder would have actually pushed harder on the original vision, maybe spent more on marketing, tried to force the behavior that they actually wanted. The YouTube founders did something very different. They watched what users were actually doing and followed the very same signal. They didn't discover YouTube by planning, they discovered it by watching. The same pattern appears with Instagram. Before Instagram existed, Kevin Systrom and Mike Krieger built an app called Burbn. Burbn was complicated. Location check-ins, rewards, social interaction, it had everything. Users ignored almost all of it except one feature, photos. That was the only thing people truly loved. So the founders made a decision that felt radical at the time. They deleted most of the product, kept one feature, photo sharing. The billion-dollar idea was not the original plan, it was the feature users refused to ignore the most. Now, consider Slack, and this is the story I want you to pay the most attention to. Stewart Butterfield was building a multiplayer online video game called Glitch. He had investors, he had a team, and he had a vision. They actually spent years building this wonderful video game. The video game, however, failed completely. His investors pulled back. People who had believed in him were now questioning everything that he was doing. Here is the moment where most founders break. You have failed completely. You failed publicly. The people who funded you are now watching. Your identity is attached to something that no longer exists. Butterfield noticed something. While building the failed video game, his team had created an internal communication tool, a simple messaging system just for themselves. Nobody planned it, nobody pitched it, it was just something they had built to survive the whole process. And it was the most useful thing that they had actually built. Not the product that they were trying to sell, the thing they built while trying to build something else. He abandoned the video game, turned the communication tool into Slack, and today as I speak, companies all around the world use this particular app. Sometimes the most valuable thing you build is the thing you never planned to build. Now, step back and look at all three examples together. YouTube, Instagram, Slack. Different founders, completely different industries, different ideas, but the same pattern appears every single time. Start with a rough direction, launch something imperfect, observe how people actually use it, notice the unexpected signal, double down on it absolutely ruthlessly. Great companies are not always invented, sometimes they are just discovered. Now, if this pattern appears so consistently, why do most people actually miss it? The answer is not intelligence, it is not work ethic, it is not access to capital, it is a belief within them. The belief that clarity must come before action, that you need the perfect idea before you're allowed to start. And that belief is exactly what stops most people permanently. Because clarity does not appear before action, clarity appears after interacting with reality. Think about this honestly. How many ideas have you actually abandoned simply because they were not perfect yet? How many things did you never start because you were waiting to feel ready? The founders of YouTube, Instagram, and Slack never felt ready either. They just started anyways. Here is where this connects to everything we've discussed on this channel: second order thinking, mental models, inversion. Every framework we have covers one underlying principle that we constantly keep talking about: the map is not the territory. Your idea about what the market wants is a map. Reality, what users actually do, is the territory. The founders of YouTube had a map: video dating. Reality showed them something completely different. The founders who won were not the ones with the best map, they were the ones willing to throw away the map when reality showed them something better. That is first principles thinking applied to building companies. And here is what that actually means in plain language. Clarity is not a prerequisite for action, it is a product of it. Your mental model of the market is always wrong until reality comes in to correct it. The signal exists in the gap between what you expected and what you were actually happening. Pivoting is not a strategy, it is an intellectual honesty that you show under pressure. And the psychological cost of abandoning your own identity, that is not weakness, it is the real barrier between every founder and their actual company. Before every major decision in building anything, ask yourself one question: what are people actually doing versus what I expected them to do? Not your assumption, not your plan, the observed behavior. In 2005, a small startup was building a platform for podcasters. Nobody used it for podcasting, they used it to share short public messages. The founders almost missed it because they were looking at the product that they had built, not the behavior that was actually in front of them, the one that they had actually built. That startup was called Twitter. That gap between what you expected and what is actually happening is where billion-dollar companies were actually found. YouTube found it in random video uploads, Instagram found it in photos, Slack found it in a tool nobody planned to build, Twitter found it in a feature nobody designed. The signal, ladies and gentlemen, is always present. You were just too in love with your original idea to ever see it. But here's the part nobody tells you. Seeing the signal is not the hard part. Acting on it is actually the most difficult part, because pivoting means admitting that the idea you told everyone about, the idea you built your identity around, was wrong. Steve Butterfield had investors telling him you don't belong in the enterprise software. Kevin Systrom had to delete most of his product that he had actually went on to build in the past. The YouTube founders had to admit their core assumption about video dating was wrong. Every single one of them had to choose between protecting their egos and following the signal. They chose the signal every single time, and that choice is available to you right now. The founders of YouTube did not discover their idea by thinking harder, they discovered it by watching what users actually did. The founders of Instagram did not plan Instagram perfectly, they noticed what people loved and cut everything else. The founder of Slack did not set out to build a communication platform, he paid attention to the most valuable thing his team had actually created while trying to build something else entirely. Which means the biggest myth in entrepreneurship is that successful founders start with clarity. Clarity almost always appears after action. The real advantage is not having the perfect idea, the real advantage is starting before you feel ready. You already have everything that you need to start. The only thing missing is the start itself. YouTube, Instagram, Slack, Twitter, 4 companies that changed the world. None of them start with the idea that they started with. The pattern is not an accident, it is a system, and now you actually have it. If this kind of thinking is what you're after, First Principles Club is exactly where you should be. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and turn on the notification. Think from scratch. Build what matters. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I will see you tomorrow.